"Can I water your flowers for food?" And what the millionaire answered shocked everyone. Charles Montgomery never imagined that a simple question from an unknown child could shake the foundations of his structured life. The 52-year-old businessman had built an empire in the construction industry, but none of his achievements prepared him for the moment he heard that timid little voice on the other side of the gate. The girl couldn't have been more than 7 years old when she approached the golden bars of the mansion in the Upper East Side neighborhood of New York City. Her brown hair was tousled by the March afternoon wind, and the little beige dress she wore had some dirt stains. In her small hands she carried a metal watering can that seemed too heavy for her. Charles was in the garden talking with Mrs. Jenkins, the gardener who had tended to his flowers for 15 years, when he heard the question that echoed like thunder in his mind. "Can I water your flowers for food?" The voice reached him filled with an innocence that cut his heart like a sharp blade. Charles turned slowly, as if in a dream, and his eyes met the small, fragile figure behind the bars. The watering can trembled in the girl's hands, which she held with determination despite the weight. Mrs. Jenkins stopped pruning the roses and looked toward the child. It was common for people to come begging in that upscale neighborhood, but such a young girl alone was unusual. She was preparing to gently explain that it wasn't allowed when she saw something that left her completely speechless. Charles Montgomery, the man who led meetings with hundreds of employees without blinking, the same one who negotiated million-dollar contracts while keeping his voice steady, fell to his knees in the middle of the lawn. His hands went straight to his face, covering his eyes as a strange sound came from his throat. "Mr. Charles!" Mrs. Jenkins ran to him, frightened. "What's happening?" But Charles couldn't answer. His shoulders trembled and tears streamed through his fingers. The girl at the gate took a few steps back, frightened by the man's reaction. She didn't understand why her simple question had caused such a commotion. "Emily Grace," Charles murmured between sobs, a name Mrs. Jenkins had never heard before. The gardener became even more confused. Who was Emily Grace? In 15 years working for the Montgomery family, she had never heard that name. She knew well the tragic story of her employer. He had lost his wife, Catherine, in a car accident when she was pregnant. The baby didn't survive. Since then, Charles had lived alone in the mansion, devoting himself entirely to work. "Mr. Charles, please explain to me what's happening," insisted Mrs. Jenkins, kneeling beside him. Charles raised his face, and Mrs. Jenkins was startled to see his red, desperate eyes. He stared intently at the girl at the gate, who was now even more frightened. "Don't go away," he shouted to the child, quickly getting up. "Please don't go away." The girl hesitated. Her stomach rumbled with hunger, and that strange man was acting very strangely. But something in his voice made her stay where she was. Charles ran to the electronic gate and pressed the button to open it. The girl took a few more steps back, ready to run if needed. "Don't be afraid," Charles said, controlling his voice to sound calmer. "You can water the flowers, yes, and you can eat whatever you want. But tell me your name first." "Lily," answered the girl, still suspicious. The name hit Charles like a punch to the stomach. Lily had been the middle name they chose for their daughter, in case Emily Grace didn't sound right. Catherine joked that the girl would be strong like a warrior, so Lily would be perfect. Mrs. Jenkins watched the scene without understanding anything. Her employer's behavior was completely out of the ordinary. She saw when he knelt down again, this time before the little girl. "Lily," he repeated the name like a prayer. "Do you live nearby?" The girl shook her head, pointing in a vague direction. "I live with Grandma Wilson. She's sick and can't work. That's why I came to ask to water the flowers." Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps us who are just starting out. Now continuing. "You can water all the flowers you want," Charles said quickly, "and Mrs. Jenkins will prepare a delicious meal for you. Isn't that right, Mrs. Jenkins?" The gardener was still processing the situation, but she agreed. There was something about the way the boss looked at that child that made her uneasy. It was as if he was seeing a ghost. Lily entered the garden carrying her old watering can. Mrs. Jenkins showed her where the faucet was and helped fill the container. Meanwhile, Charles couldn't take his eyes off the girl. Every movement of hers, every expression seemed familiar in a way that defied logic. "Mrs. Jenkins," he called the gardener aside, Prepare the guest room. Lily is staying here tonight. Mr. Montgomery, with all due respect, you don't even know this child. What if she has a grandmother who takes care of her? Then we'll meet the grandmother too, Charles interrupted. But Lily won't go hungry anymore, that I guarantee. Mrs. Jenkins knew it was no use arguing when the boss made a decision. But something about that situation bothered her deeply. Charles was acting impulsively, almost irrationally. While Lily carefully watered each flower bed, Charles watched her from a distance. The way she held the watering can, how she tilted her head when concentrating, how she bit her lower lip when thinking, all of this awakened a painful familiarity in his chest. Catherine used to bite her lip the same way when focused on her architecture projects, and during her pregnancy, she spent hours imagining what their daughter would be like, gesturing the same way Lily did when explaining to the flowers why they needed water. The afternoon passed and Lily continued watering with impressive dedication for such a young child. Mrs. Thompson, the family cook, prepared a careful meal with rice, beans, steak, and salad. When she saw the girl eating with such pleasure, her eyes filled with tears. "Poor little thing," she murmured to Mrs. Jenkins. "When was the last time she ate properly?" "I don't know," Mrs. Jenkins replied, worried. "But Mr. Montgomery is acting very strange. I've never seen him like this." After dinner, Charles insisted that Lily take a bath and put on clean clothes. Mrs. Jenkins found some clothes that had been left over from when her niece stayed at the house. Seeing Lily clean and tidy with her hair shining, Charles felt his heart race. "Would you like to see the rest of the garden?" he asked. Lily nodded yes, and they walked together along the stone paths between the flower beds. Charles showed her each type of flower, explaining their names and care. The girl listened with impressive attention, asking smart questions that surprised him. "Do roses need more water than others?" she asked. "Not exactly. They need just the right amount of water. Too much water can rot the roots." "Just like people," Lily said thoughtfully. "Grandma Wilson always says too much of anything is bad." The girl's simple wisdom touched Charles deeply. They stopped before a particularly beautiful white rose bush. "This was my wife's favorite," he said without thinking. "Where is she?" Lily's innocent question struck him like lightning. Charles took a deep breath before answering. "She passed away when you were... when I lost my daughter. Your daughter got lost." "It's a complicated story," Charles said, kneeling to be at Lily's eye level. "But perhaps one day I'll tell you." That night, after Lily fell asleep in the guest room, Charles sat in his study looking at a faded photograph. It was an ultrasound of Catherine pregnant, the only memory left of the daughter he never got to meet. Mrs. Jenkins knocked on the door and entered with a cup of tea. "Mr. Charles, we need to talk." "I know what you're going to say, Mrs. Jenkins, that I'm acting like a madman." "No, sir, but I need to understand. Who is Emily Grace?" Charles put the photo away in the drawer and sighed deeply. "Emily Grace would have been my daughter's name. The daughter Catherine and I lost in the accident." "But, sir, the baby didn't survive the accident. You told me so yourself." "That's what they told me at the hospital," Charles murmured. "But what if they were wrong?" Mrs. Jenkins felt a chill. She had known Charles for many years and knew he wasn't one for fantasies or illusions. If he was questioning something that happened so long ago, he must have a reason. "What are you thinking?" "Mrs. Jenkins, that girl, there's something about her that reminds me of Catherine in an impossible way. It's not just her looks. It's the way she moves, thinks, speaks." "Mr. Charles, with all due respect, perhaps it's just grief. The desire to have a daughter might be making you see things that—" "No," Charles interrupted firmly. "It's more than that. Much more." The next morning, Lily woke up early and found Charles already in the garden. She ran to him with a smile that lit up the day. "Can I water the flowers again?" "You can water them whenever you want," Charles replied, feeling his heart warm. "But first, have some breakfast." Mrs. Thompson made special pancakes. During breakfast, Charles asked careful questions about Lily's life. He found out she lived with her grandmother, Mrs. Wilson, in a small, simple house about a mile away. Her grandmother worked as a cleaner, but she had recently hurt her back and couldn't work anymore. That's why I came to ask to water the flowers, Lily explained. Grandma Wilson said that working has always been the best way to get what you need. The girl's life philosophy impressed Charles. Even so young, she already understood the value of work and dignity. It reminded him of his own humble childhood, when he helped his father in the auto repair shop to help provide for the family. Lily, how about if you come to water the flowers every day? I'll pay you a wage, like a real job. The girl's eyes lit up. Really? Can I tell Grandma Wilson I got a job? Yes, you can. And I'd also like to meet your grandmother. How about we go visit her today? Lily's smile wavered a little. She doesn't really like rich people. She says they only bring trouble. Charles smiled sadly. He understood the grandmother's distrust. Many simple folks had reasons to be wary of the wealthy, especially when they showed up offering help out of the blue. Then I'll just have to earn her trust, little by little, he said. After Lily finished watering the morning flowers, they went together to Grandma Wilson's house. It was a simple but well-kept building, with a small garden in front where some vegetables grew. Mrs. Wilson appeared at the door when she saw Lily arriving with a man in a suit. She was a lady with graying hair and a determined look, who wasn't the least bit intimidated by Charles's presence. Lily, who is this man? Grandma Wilson. He gave me a job. I'm going to water the flowers at his house every day and earn real money. Mrs. Wilson looked at Charles with suspicion. And what kind of job is it that a rich man wants to give to a 7-year-old girl? Charles realized he needed to be very careful. The fierce protectiveness Mrs. Wilson showed for Lily was both admirable and understandable. Mrs. Wilson, my name is Charles Montgomery. I have a large garden that needs daily care, and Lily has shown a natural talent for gardening. It's honest work, and she can come home every day. Large garden, Mrs. Wilson repeated, still suspicious. And why did you choose my granddaughter specifically? Because she came to me offering work in exchange for food. That shows character and determination. Mrs. Wilson studied Charles's face for a long moment. There was something sincere in his eyes, but she hadn't reached 65 years of age by being naive. Come in, she said finally. Let's talk properly. The house was small, but impeccably clean. Mrs. Wilson offered coffee and sat at the kitchen table, keeping Lily by her side. Mr. Montgomery, I'll be direct. Why would a man like you be interested in helping a poor girl you don't even know? The question was fair and direct. Charles took a deep breath, knowing he needed to be honest, even if only partially. Mrs. Wilson, I lost my wife and daughter a few years ago. Since then, my house has become an empty place. When Lily showed up offering work, she brought a joy I hadn't felt in a long time. And what guarantees that you won't grow tired of this joy and leave my granddaughter in the lurch? Because I intend to make a formal contract with a monthly salary and everything documented. Lily will have guaranteed employment for as long as she wants. Mrs. Wilson was surprised. She didn't expect him to take the situation so seriously. What kind of contract? Assistant gardener. Part-time salary with transportation and meal vouchers. Everything by the book. Lily looked from one adult to the other, trying to understand the conversation. She only knew that she liked watering the flowers and that the kind man was offering an opportunity to help her grandmother. Can I think about it? Mrs. Wilson asked. Of course, but in the meantime Lily can keep coming to water the flowers. No commitment. In the following days, Lily established a routine. She arrived in the morning, had coffee with Charles, watered the flowers, had lunch, and left in the mid-afternoon. Charles paid a fair daily rate and always sent extra food to Mrs. Wilson. Mrs. Jenkins watched everything with growing concern. The boss was becoming attached to that child in a way that didn't seem healthy. He cancelled meetings to be home when Lily arrived and spent hours just watching her work in the garden. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps us who are just starting out. Now continuing. One afternoon, while Lily was watering the begonias, she started humming a tune. Charles, who was reading reports on the porch, dropped everything and paid attention to the melody. It was a lullaby that Catherine used to sing, an old song she had learned from her mother. Lily, he called, trying to keep his voice casual. Where did you learn that song? Grandma Wilson always sings it to help me sleep. she replied, continuing to water. She said my mother really liked that song. Your mother? Charles felt his heart race. Do you remember her? Lily stopped watering and became thoughtful. Not really. Grandma Wilson says she left when I was a baby. But sometimes I dream of a woman with long hair who smelled like flowers. The description hit Charles like a bolt of lightning. Catherine had long hair and always wore jasmine perfume. He rose from his chair, trying to control his emotion. What kind of flowers? Sweet ones, like jasmine. Charles had to hold onto the porch railing to keep from falling. It couldn't be a coincidence. Lily was too young to make up such specific details. That night, he couldn't sleep. He kept walking through the garden, trying to put together the pieces of a puzzle that seemed impossible. If Lily were indeed his daughter, how had she ended up in Mrs. Wilson's care? And why had the doctors said the baby had died? The next day, Charles made a decision that would change everything. He sought out Dr. Richard Harrison, the physician who had treated Catherine at the time of the accident. He was a trusted man who had known the family for years. Dr. Harrison, I need to clarify something about Catherine's accident. Charles, we've talked about this many times. I know it's hard to accept, but it's not that, Charles interrupted. I want to know exactly what happened to the baby, every detail. Dr. Harrison hesitated. It was a difficult time, one he preferred not to revisit. Why ask this now, after so many years? Because I need to be absolutely certain that my daughter really died. The doctor fell silent for a long moment. Charles, are you all right? Is there something specific making you question this? I met a girl, Charles began, but stopped. How could he explain without sounding completely crazy? What kind of girl? A 7-year-old girl the same age my daughter would have been, and there are similarities, disturbing ones. Dr. Harrison leaned forward in his chair, concerned. Charles, grief can make us see things that... It's not grief, Charles said firmly. It's something more. I need the medical records from the accident, all of them. Records from 7 years ago. That will be complicated. Dr. Harrison, I'm begging you. If there's any possibility, however small, that my daughter is alive, I need to know. The doctor agreed to check the old files. It would take a few days to locate all the documentation from that time, but he would do his best. While he waited, Charles continued observing Lily. Each day brought new, unsettling discoveries. The girl had a crescent moon-shaped birthmark behind her left ear, exactly like the one Catherine had in the same spot. Mrs. Jenkins also began noticing the physical similarities. The shape of the eyes, the curve of the smile, even the way Lily tilted her head when curious. Everything strikingly reminded her of Catherine. Mr. Montgomery, she said one afternoon after Lily had left. May I ask you something? Of course, Mrs. Jenkins. That girl, there's something special about her, isn't there? Charles looked at the housekeeper, his confidant for so many years. What do you think? I think she looks very much like Mrs. Catherine, not just physically. Her gestures, her mannerisms, it's as if she were family. Mrs. Jenkins's observation confirmed that Charles wasn't imagining things. If someone who knew Catherine intimately was noticing the similarities, perhaps there was indeed something deeper going on. A few days later, Dr. Harrison called with information that left Charles completely unsettled. Charles, I need you to come to my office. I found some inconsistencies in the records. What kind of inconsistencies? It's better we talk in person. Can you come today? Charles cancelled all his appointments and went straight to the office. Dr. Harrison had a stack of papers on his desk, and his expression was grave. Charles, I reviewed all the documents from the time of the accident. There are some things that don't add up. What do you mean? First, the baby's medical record is incomplete. Important pages are missing, including the death certificate. Charles felt his blood run cold. What do you mean it's incomplete? Second, I spoke with the nurse who was on duty that night. She remembers the case but said there was confusion in the procedures. What kind of confusion? Apparently 2 babies were born around the same time that stormy night. Both were premature due to the mother's trauma. One didn't make it, but there was a mix-up in the identification. Charles stood up from his chair, his legs trembling. Are you saying there might have been a switch? I'm saying there were possibilities that weren't explored at the time. The night was chaotic. with several accidents happening simultaneously because of the storm. And the other baby? What happened to him? That's the problem. There are no clear records. The hospital system was having problems that night, and some files were lost. Charles sat down again, trying to process the information. Dr. Harrison, is it possible that my daughter is alive? It's possible, Charles. And if you really met a girl who raises these suspicions, perhaps we should investigate further. How? DNA test. It's the only way to be absolutely certain. Charles felt a mixture of hope and terror. What if Lily was indeed his daughter? How to explain it to Mrs. Wilson? How to process the fact that he had lost 7 years of his own daughter's life? But Dr. Harrison, if there really was a mix-up, how did this girl end up with a grandmother who has no connection to me? That's a question we can only answer by investigating further. Perhaps the family who took the baby didn't know about the mix-up. Perhaps they found out later and... Well, there are several possibilities. Charles left the office in a state of shock. His mind was buzzing with possibilities, theories, and fears. If Lily was really his daughter, that meant she had spent years living in difficult conditions, while he mourned a loss that perhaps never happened. When he got home, Lily was already in the garden watering the afternoon plants. She waved happily when she saw him, and Charles felt his heart break. How could he do a DNA test without creating expectations that might not come true? Mr. Montgomery, Lily ran to him. The white roses are getting prettier. I think they like me. I'm sure they do, Charles replied, kneeling to be at her level. Lily, can I ask you a question about your family? Of course. Do you know anything about your parents, besides what your grandmother has told you? Lily became thoughtful for a moment. Grandma Wilson doesn't like to talk about it much. She gets sad when I ask. And you've never been curious? I am. Sometimes I dream of a big house and a man who teaches me about flowers, but Grandma Wilson says they're just childish dreams. Charles felt a chill. How could a 7-year-old girl dream of such specific scenarios if they were just childish fantasies? What else do you remember about these dreams? The man had hair that was a little grey on the sides, just like yours, and the house had a huge garden with many different flowers. The description was so accurate that Charles had trouble breathing. His temples had started turning grey a few years ago, exactly as Lily had described. Lily, he said carefully, would you like to have a little medical exam, just to make sure everything is all right with your health? What kind of exam? Nothing that hurts, just some questions and maybe a simple blood test. Lily hesitated. I need to ask Grandma Wilson. Of course. What if we talk to her together? That afternoon, Charles accompanied Lily to Mrs. Wilson's house. He was more nervous than he had ever been in any business meeting. How to explain to a protective grandmother that he wanted to do DNA tests on her granddaughter? Mrs. Wilson welcomed them with coffee already prepared, as she always did. Charles noticed that she had grown accustomed to his presence and no longer showed the initial distrust. Mrs. Wilson, he began carefully, I wanted to talk about Lily's health. Is she sick? The grandmother asked, immediately concerned. No, nothing like that. It's just a precaution. I'd like to take her for some routine exams, since she's working at my house. What kind of exams? Blood, mainly. To check if she has any nutritional deficiencies or health problems. Mrs. Wilson studied Charles's face. There was something in his expression that she couldn't quite decipher. Why do you care so much about my granddaughter, Mr. Charles? The direct question caught Charles off guard. He couldn't tell the truth yet, but he didn't want to lie either. Because I've grown attached to her, Mrs. Wilson. Lily brought joy to a house that had been empty for years. And what if the tests show something unexpected? The question sent a chill down Charles's spine. Could it be that Mrs. Wilson knew something she wasn't telling? What do you mean, unexpected? Nothing serious, Mrs. Wilson said quickly. I just worry about anything related to her health. But Charles detected something in the woman's voice, a hesitation, as if she were hiding something important. Mrs. Wilson, may I ask you a personal question? Go ahead. How exactly did Lily end up with you? Mrs. Wilson fell silent for a long moment. nervously stirring her coffee cup. "It's a complicated story," she finally said. "I have time." Her mother, my daughter, wasn't a very responsible person. When Lily was a baby, she showed up here one stormy night, desperate, saying she couldn't take care of the girl. And the father. She said the father had died, that she had no one else in the world. She begged me to take care of Lily while she got her life together. And then? She never came back, Mrs. Wilson sighed. I waited months, then years. I raised Lily as if she were my own daughter. Charles felt there was more to the story than Mrs. Wilson was telling. "Do you have any documents from that time? Birth certificate, anything like that?" "I do. Why do you ask?" "Professional curiosity. I've worked with documentation for years." Mrs. Wilson hesitated, but went to fetch an old box from the bedroom. She returned with some yellowed papers. "Here's the birth certificate." Charles examined the document and felt the world spin. Lily's birth date was exactly the same as his daughter should have had. The hospital was the same one where Catherine had given birth. "Mrs. Wilson," he said, trying to keep his voice steady. "This hospital, do you remember why your daughter gave birth there specifically?" "She said it was the closest hospital when the labor pains started. It was a terrible stormy night. I remember well because I was worried about the roads." Charles felt his heart race. It was the same night, the same hospital, the same storm. The chances of this being a coincidence were practically zero. "Mrs. Wilson, I need to be honest with you." "About what?" "I believe Lily might be my daughter." The silence that followed was deafening. Mrs. Wilson looked at Charles as if he had gone mad. "What do you mean, your daughter?" "My wife gave birth at the same hospital, on the same night, during the same storm. The doctors told me the baby had died, but now I've discovered there may have been a mix-up." Mrs. Wilson turned pale. "That's impossible. Lily is my daughter's child." "Then why did your daughter never come back? Why are there no photos of her with Lily as a baby? Why does the girl have dreams about a man teaching her about flowers in a big house?" Each of Charles's questions was like a dagger to Mrs. Wilson's certainty. She looked at Lily, who was playing distractedly in the backyard, unaware of the adults' conversation. "Even if it were true," Mrs. Wilson said with a trembling voice, "Lily has been my granddaughter for 7 years. I won't let anyone take her from me." "I don't want to take her from you," Charles said quickly. "I just want to know the truth. And if it's true, I want Lily to have 2 families who love her, not to lose one to gain another." Mrs. Wilson studied Charles' face for a long time. "And if the tests confirm she's your daughter, then we'll find a way for all of us to handle this situation in the best way possible. And if they confirm she's not, then I'll continue being the boss who became attached to a special employee, and you will always be welcome in my life whenever you want." Mrs. Wilson took a deep breath. "All right. You may proceed with the tests, but Lily must not know what we suspect until we're certain." "I completely agree. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us tremendously, as we're just starting out. Now continuing. The tests were scheduled for the following week. Dr. Richard Harrison committed to handling everything with maximum discretion. For Lily, it would just be a routine checkup that her new boss was offering. During that week, Charles observed Lily with different eyes. Every gesture, every word, every expression took on new meaning. If she were truly his daughter, he had missed 7 years of her life. 7 years of first steps, first words, first drawings, first school days. Guilt consumed him. How had he not noticed before? How had he so easily accepted the doctor's version without questioning it more deeply? On the other hand, Lily had grown up with Mrs. Wilson's love. Her grandmother had raised her with affection and dedication, giving her all despite financial difficulties. If there had indeed been a switch, Mrs. Wilson was also a victim of the situation. On the day of the tests, Charles picked up Lily and Mrs. Wilson to take them to the office. Lily was excited about the outing, suspecting nothing. For her, it was just another outing with her kind boss. Dr. Richard Harrison received them with professional discretion. He explained to Lily that he would ask some questions and take a small blood sample. Nothing major. "Will it hurt?" Lily asked. Just a quick little pinch, Dr. Harrison assured. While the doctor performed the procedures, Charles and Mrs. Wilson waited in tension. Both knew the results of those tests could change their lives forever. "When will we have the results?" Charles asked. "In a week. But Charles, I need you to be prepared for any outcome. And if it's positive, you'll need to decide how to handle the situation." That week was the longest of Charles's life. He tried to maintain normal routine, but his mind constantly turned to the possibilities. Lily continued watering the flowers every day, unaware of the emotional storm unfolding around her. Mrs. Jenkins noticed her boss's anxiety and tried to ease it. "Mr. Charles, regardless of what you discover, you did the right thing. It's better to know the truth than to live with doubts." "And if the truth is worse than doubt," Charles asked, "at least it will be real. And you can build something new based on reality, not illusions." On Friday, Dr. Harrison called. "Charles, you need to come to the office. Bring Mrs. Wilson too, we have the results." The doctor's tone revealed nothing, but Charles felt his life was about to change completely. In the office, Dr. Harrison waited with a sealed envelope on the desk. Charles and Mrs. Wilson sat side by side, both with trembling hands. "Before opening the results," Dr. Harrison said, "I want you to know that regardless of what we discover, Lily is a loved and well-cared-for girl. That's what matters most." "Just say it," Mrs. Wilson pleaded, unable to bear the tension any longer. Dr. Harrison opened the envelope and read the document silently before speaking. "The DNA test is positive. Lily is Charles's biological daughter." The silence that followed was absolute. Charles felt as if the world had stopped turning. His daughter was alive. His daughter was alive and had spent 7 years believing she was fatherless. Mrs. Wilson began to cry, but they weren't just tears of sadness. There was relief, too, as if a long-suspected truth had finally come to light. "Mrs. Wilson," Charles said with a choked voice, "you knew, didn't you?" "I suspected," she admitted through tears. "My daughter showed up with baby Lily one stormy night, desperate. She said strange things, that the girl wasn't really hers, that something had happened at the hospital. But she was so distraught I thought it was postpartum confusion. And then she disappeared and never came back. I raised Lily as my granddaughter, but I always knew there was more to the story." Charles stood up and walked to the window, trying to process the reality. "My daughter lived 7 years thinking I didn't exist." "And you lived 7 years thinking she had passed away," Mrs. Wilson replied. "You were both victims of the same situation." Dr. Richard Harrison intervened. "Now you need to decide how to tell Lily and how to organize this new reality." "She's 7 years old," Charles said. "How do you explain such a complicated situation to a child?" "With care, love, and time," Mrs. Wilson answered. "Lily is smart and sensitive. She deserves to know the truth, but in a way she can understand." In the following weeks, Charles and Mrs. Wilson worked together to prepare for the revelation. They decided that Charles would spend more time with Lily, building an even stronger bond before revealing the truth. Charles began having dinner at Mrs. Wilson's house a few times, getting to know Lily's routine better. He saw how she did her homework at the kitchen table, how she helped her grandmother with small chores, how she tended a small herb garden in the backyard. Each discovery was bittersweet. On one hand, he was proud of the daughter who had become a responsible and caring girl. On the other, it deeply hurt to have missed so many important moments. One evening, while Lily was drawing at the kitchen table, she asked something that caught both adults off guard. "Mr. Charles, why do you sometimes look sad when you look at me?" Charles and Mrs. Wilson exchanged glances. The time had come. "Lily," Charles said, pulling up a chair to sit beside her, "I need to tell you something very important." "What kind of thing?" "Do you remember I told you I lost my daughter a long time ago?" "I remember. She got lost when she was a baby." "Actually, she didn't get lost. I thought she was gone, but I found out she was okay, growing up with a family that took very good care of her." Lily stopped drawing and looked at Charles curiously. "And where was she?" "Here, with your grandmother Wilson. Lily, you are my daughter." The girl fell silent for a long moment, processing the information. "What do you mean, I'm your daughter? When you were born, there was a mix-up at the hospital. I thought you were gone, and you grew up thinking your father didn't exist, but we were looking for each other without knowing. Then why did it take so long to find me? Lily's innocent question pierced Charles's heart. Because I didn't know you were alive, and you didn't know I was looking. Lily looked at Mrs. Wilson. Grandma Wilson, does this mean I'm not your granddaughter anymore? Of course you're my granddaughter, Mrs. Wilson said quickly. Now you have two families, your heart family, which is me, and your blood family, which is your father. And can I still live with Grandma Wilson? Yes, you can, Charles replied. We'll find a way for you to have both families always close. Lily was thoughtful for a few minutes, absent-mindedly drawing on the paper. Mr. Charles, I mean Dad, does this mean the big house with the garden from my dreams was real? It was real, and you can come live there whenever you want, or we can find a way for all of us to live together. And the flowers? Can I still water the flowers? You can water the flowers forever. In fact, now they're your flowers too. Lily smiled, the first genuine smile since the conversation had begun. So now I have a giant garden to take care of. You have a giant garden, a father who loves you very much, and a grandmother who also loves you very much. And a house with many rooms? Many rooms, many gardens, many flowers, and lots of love. Lily jumped from the chair and hugged Charles. Daddy, can you teach me the names of all the flowers? I can teach you the names of all the flowers, how to care for each one, how to plant, how to harvest, everything you want to learn. Mrs. Wilson watched the scene with tears in her eyes. She had feared that the revelation would traumatize Lily, but the girl was handling the situation in a surprisingly mature way. In the following months, they established a new routine. Lily spent part of the week with Mrs. Wilson and part at the mansion with Charles. The guest room was transformed into her personal bedroom, decorated with garden and plant themes. Charles hired private tutors to supplement Lily's education, but kept her enrolled in the public school where she studied. He didn't want the girl to lose contact with her roots and friends. Mrs. Wilson moved into a small house on Charles's property, an annex that was built especially for her. This way, Lily could have access to both families without feeling like she was abandoning anyone. The revelation of the story spread through the neighborhood and sparked curiosity and admiration. Many people were moved by the caring way the situation was resolved, always prioritizing Lily's well-being. Dr. Richard Harrison investigated more deeply what had happened at the hospital. He discovered that Mrs. Wilson's daughter, desperate and confused after a traumatic birth, had indeed taken the wrong baby without realizing it. When she discovered the error days later, she panicked and disappeared, leaving Lily with her mother. The woman never had the courage to tell the truth and ended up vanishing completely. Dr. Richard found records that she had moved to another state, but never kept in touch with the family again. Charles decided not to look for her. The important thing was that Lily was safe and loved, and that everyone had found a way to live together harmoniously. The mansion's garden flourished like never before under Lily's care. She developed a natural talent for gardening and began experimenting with different types of plants. Charles hired a professional landscaper to teach advanced techniques to his daughter. Mrs. Thompson, the cook, became deeply attached to Lily and began teaching her family recipes. Mrs. Jenkins became a kind of second grandmother, always willing to help with homework or tell stories. Life in the mansion gained a new energy. The sound of children's laughter once again echoed through the halls, and Charles discovered that being a father was even more wonderful than he had imagined. Lily grew up in an environment of much love and care, but maintained the simple values that Mrs. Wilson had taught her. She helped with household chores, took care of her own clothes, and never forgot to be grateful for everything she received. Charles completely changed his priorities. He drastically reduced the time dedicated to work and began actively participating in Lily's education and growth. He took her to school, helped with homework, attended school meetings and events. The company continued to prosper, but now Charles had a different motivation. He worked to secure his daughter's future, not just to accumulate wealth. He established an educational fund for Lily and created a foundation aimed at helping children in similar situations. Mrs. Wilson adapted well to her new life. She had her own garden to care for, a comfortable little house, and the peace of mind of knowing that Lily was safe and well educated. She and Charles developed a solid friendship based on their mutual love for Lily. On weekends, the whole family would gather for special lunches. Lily insisted on preparing salads with greens she grew herself. Charles learned to cook simple dishes that his daughter liked, and Mrs. Wilson taught traditional recipes to everyone. The story became known in the community as an example of how love can overcome any obstacle. Many families going through similar situations sought advice from Charles and Mrs. Wilson. They created a support group for parents who had lost children and for people caring for children without knowing their true origin. The group met monthly at the mansion, and Lily always helped by serving tea and cookies she had learned to make. The girl developed impressive emotional maturity for her age. She could talk about her story without trauma, explaining to other children how sometimes families are formed in different ways, but what matters is always love. At school, Lily excelled, not only academically but also through her natural leadership. She created a children's gardening club and taught her classmates how to care for plants. The school inaugurated a community garden under her supervision. Charles accompanied all of his daughter's activities with pride and admiration. Watching her grow into a confident, generous and talented person made up for all the lost years. He documented every achievement, every discovery, every special moment. Family photos covered all the walls of the mansion. Portraits of Lily in the garden, at school parties learning to cook, hugging Mrs. Wilson, playing with the dogs Charles had adopted to keep his daughter company. The mansion had transformed into a true home. The empty silence was replaced by lively conversations, laughter, music, and life. Charles hired a piano teacher for Lily, who showed a refined musical ear. On Sundays, Lily gave small concerts for the family. She played simple melodies while Charles and Mrs. Wilson watched, moved. These were moments of pure happiness that none of them had ever imagined possible. Every year on Lily's birthday, they organized special parties in the garden. They invited all the children from school, the mansion staff with their families, and community members. The parties became anticipated events in the neighborhood. Charles made sure the parties had gardening activities for the children. Each guest left with a small seedling that Lily had personally prepared. It was her way of sharing her passion for flowers with everyone. Mrs. Wilson became the guardian of family traditions. She told stories about Lily's childhood, taught old songs, and kept alive the memory of the difficult times that were overcome with love and perseverance. The relationship between Charles and Mrs. Wilson evolved into something very special. They became true partners in raising Lily, respecting each other's opinions and always working in harmony. When Lily turned 10, she organized a surprise for her father and grandmother herself. With the help of Mrs. Jenkins and Mrs. Thompson, she prepared a photo album telling the whole family story from the first day she asked to water the flowers to the most recent moments. On the last page of the album, Lily had written a letter. Dad Charles and Grandma Wilson, thank you for loving me so much and for teaching me that family isn't just about blood, but also about heart. Thank you for never fighting over me, but always working together to make me happy. I love you both infinitely, and promise to always care for the flowers that brought us together. With love, your daughter and granddaughter forever, Lily. Charles and Mrs. Wilson cried as they read the letter. Lily's maturity and wisdom constantly amazed them. She had come to understand that her special situation was actually a blessing, having two families who loved her unconditionally. As Lily grew, her passion for plants deepened. She began studying botany on her own, reading advanced books and conducting experiments in the garden. Charles hired university professors to give her private lessons on the subject. The girl developed innovative cultivation techniques and began creating new flower varieties through grafting and crossbreeding. Her garden became a kind of natural laboratory where she tested her theories. At 12 years old, Lily won first place at a municipal science fair with a project about medicinal plants grown at home. The project caught the attention of researchers from the local university, who invited her to visit their botany laboratories. Charles accompanied his daughter on the visit and felt proud seeing how she conversed as an equal with the scientists. Lily asked intelligent questions and presented observations that impressed the experienced professionals. The professor in charge of the laboratory, suggested that Lily participate in a special program for young talents in botany. It would be a unique opportunity to develop her knowledge with proper scientific guidance. Mrs. Wilson initially worried about the idea of Lily getting involved in activities so advanced for her age. But when she saw the sparkle in her granddaughter's eyes when talking about plants, she understood it was her natural destiny. The program allowed Lily to maintain her normal school routine while dedicating a few hours each week to guided research projects. She began working on developing plants more resistant to drought, a project that could help communities with water problems. Charles funded the construction of a professional greenhouse in the mansion's backyard, equipped with all the necessary resources for Lily's experiments. The greenhouse became her favorite place, where she spent hours observing plant growth and recording results. News of Lily's talents spread through the scientific community. She was invited to present her work at botany conferences, always accompanied by Charles or Mrs. Wilson. During one of these presentations, Lily met Dr. William Parker, a renowned botanist who was impressed with her research. He offered to become her official mentor, guiding her studies so she could enter university with a solid foundation. Dr. William was a 60-year-old widower who had dedicated his life to research. Seeing Lily's potential, he committed to visiting her weekly to monitor her projects and teach advanced techniques. Dr. William's presence brought a new dimension to the family's life. He became a sort of scientific grandfather to Lily, always willing to answer her questions and challenge her to think more deeply. Mrs. Wilson immediately liked Dr. William. They were the same age and shared their love for Lily and plants. Gradually, they developed a special friendship that brought even more joy to the household. Charles watched with satisfaction as his daughter grew surrounded by people who invested in her future. Lily had access to the best educational resources, but kept her feet on the ground thanks to the values taught by Mrs. Wilson. The family routine now included Dr. William's weekly visits, who always arrived with new books and exotic seeds for Lily to experiment with. He would dine with the family and tell stories about his research travels around the world. Lily absorbed every piece of information like a sponge. Her curiosity was insatiable, and she took detailed notes about everything she learned. Her notebooks became true handwritten botanical encyclopedias. At 15, Lily developed a new variety of rose that combined the resilience of wild species with the beauty of cultivated roses. The discovery was published in a scientific journal, making her the youngest researcher to have an article accepted in that publication. The achievement brought media attention, but Charles and Mrs. Wilson made sure to protect Lily's privacy. They allowed a few interviews, but always focused on her research, not her personal story. Lily became an inspiration for young people interested in science. She began giving talks at schools, always emphasizing that her love for plants had started when she was a little girl who just wanted to help her family by watering flowers for food. Lily's story reached the ears of a science documentary producer who proposed making a film about her journey. After much family discussion, they agreed, as long as the focus was educational and inspiring. The documentary followed Lily for a year, showing her study routine, her experiments, her discoveries, and also family moments. The film highlighted how family support and personal dedication could lead to extraordinary achievements. During filming, the story of Charles and Lily's reunion was naturally revealed. The producer was fascinated by this aspect of the narrative and decided to include it as an emotional backdrop for the documentary. The film was well received by critics and audiences, winning awards at science film festivals. More importantly for the family, the documentary inspired many people to value family bonds and pursue their dreams with dedication. With the documentary's impact, Lily received scholarships from several international universities. She could choose among the best institutions in the world to continue her studies in botany. The decision was not easy. Lily was eager to expand her knowledge, but did not want to be away from the family she had found after so much hardship. Charles and Mrs. Wilson assured her they would support any choice. After much thought, Lily chose a university in the United States that offered an innovative research program in tropical botany. She could study close to home and develop projects that would benefit the American flora. The decision relieved the whole family. Lily could grow professionally without losing the family bonds that were so important for her emotional stability. Dr. William helped negotiate special conditions so Lily could maintain some of her experiments at home, complementing her university studies with personal research in the mansion's greenhouse. When the time came for Lily to enter university, the family organized a special party in the garden. They invited everyone who had followed her journey: teachers, friends, neighbors, mansion staff, and members of the scientific community. The party was held among the flowers Lily had planted over the years. The garden was now a spectacle of colors and aromas, the result of years of dedication and love. Each flower bed told a part of the story of the girl who had asked to water flowers for food. During the party, Lily gave an emotional speech thanking everyone who had contributed to her upbringing. She spoke about the importance of family, education, and perseverance in pursuing dreams. "It all started when I was a little hungry girl who knocked on the gate of a mansion asking to water flowers in exchange for food," she said. "Today I am here, about to enter university to study botany, surrounded by people who love and support me. This has taught me that miracles happen when we put love and dedication into everything we do." Charles and Mrs. Wilson listened to the speech with tears in their eyes. The girl they had taken in had blossomed into an extraordinary young woman who honored both her birth family and her family of the heart. The final image of the party showed Lily watering the white roses that Catherine had so loved, now tended by the daughter who had found her way back home through the flowers. Charles was beside her, finally at peace with the past and filled with hope for the future. Dr. William Parker watched from afar, proud of his protégé and happy to have found a new family in his later years. Mrs. Wilson was putting the final touches on the party, satisfied to have raised a girl who embodied all the values she had tried to teach. The garden would continue to bloom, just like the love of the family that had been reunited through a child's simple question: "Can I water your flowers for food?" The answer had changed all their lives forever. End of story. Now tell me what you thought of this moving story of overcoming challenges and family love. Do you believe Lily made the right choices along her journey? Leave a comment sharing your thoughts and let us know where you're watching from. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel so you won't miss other inspiring narratives that show how love can transform lives.